accommodation and visa applications, you need to show at least the first 3 months of accommodation have been booked, and therefore a lot of people will organise rentals, or obviously if you already purchased your own home, then you can use that address. So you will need to have some form of accommodation lined up. They also accept people providing accommodation. So if you've got friends or family, you can provide an attestation d'hébergement, which shows evidence that you will be living with those people for at least the 3 months required to obtain your visa. Visa applications cost €99 or currency equivalent, and there may be some additional charges at specific visa centres for additional services or other processing fees. Visas can be valid for varying amounts of time, and it depends on what type of visa you've applied for. So there's 6-month visas, there's 12-month visas, and then there's the long stay visas that can then be used to apply for residency. So it will depend on what type of visa you've applied for as to how long it will be valid for. When you apply, there is no French test. However, when you arrive in France, if you've applied for a working visa, for example, then you will be asked to complete a French test to assess your level of the language, and you have to achieve level A1, which is not the highest standard. Despite the fact it's called A1, in fact, it seems to work in reverse, and actually B is then a higher level than A. So as long as you can achieve level A1, which is a basic conversational level for that type of visa, then you will be accepted. So when it comes to remote working, France doesn't recognise digital nomads. So unfortunately, it's not possible to just come to France and start working remotely for an existing UK company. What your employer will need to consider is whether A, you work for them directly, continue your employee relationship, but that will require them to register with the French authorities for social security and tax in respect of an employee based in France. The alternative is that you can use a company in France that employs you and pays your salary, with which your UK employer is contracted. Alternatively, you can become self-employed, but you will need more than one client, as otherwise it can be considered to be disguised employment. You will need to consider how you can evidence that you will still have sufficient income to support yourself, and if you have other means of financial revenue, such as investment, dividends or similar, that can show that you still have enough to live on, then potentially that will be sufficient to show that you can still support yourself in France. So once you've been granted your long stay visa and you're in France, you will have to register that visa within 3 months of arrival, and you start your processes to become integrated into the French government systems such as social security, healthcare, etc. Approximately 3 months before your visa expires, you will then have the opportunity to start your renewal application at your local prefecture, start your documentation so that they can assess whether you continue to meet the requirements longer term for staying in France. There are a number of factors to consider, including what type of visa you're on, so retired inactive visas annually, for example, whereas if it's a working visa and you've passed all the requirements in terms of the language test, etc., then you will be given the balance of a 5-year residency. So if you've had a 1-year visa, you will then be given a residency card for 4 years, at which point in the end of that 4th year, you will have to reapply again.